Hey, what's up? It's Matt. We're back with another expert roundup from the restaurant biz, but this time he's kind of not from the restaurant biz. We're here with Chris Spear of Chefs Without Restaurants. What's going on, Chris?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me today.
I'm doing great, man. It's sunny and like 50 degrees in Cincinnati, so it's a good place to be right now until it goes to like 10 degrees in a week or two, which probably ends up doing.
Yeah, we're about the same here in Maryland.
So tell us who you are, a little about your background and how you got to this point of creating, I call it a channel because that's where I see it on Instagram and other places, the Chef Without Restaurants brand.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Boston area. I've always been interested in food. I was just telling you, I started in fast food when I was a teenager, but I always knew I wanted to be in the food business. And I guess at the time I said the restaurant business because, in the mid 90s, that's what you did. If you wanted to be a chef, you were in a restaurant. So I ended up going to Johnson & Wales, got a 4-year culinary degree. And when I got out, I had trouble landing jobs in restaurants. Just like, I think I was young. People didn't want to hire me or give me a shot. And I had crippling student loan debt anyway, and restaurants weren't really looking to pay. And I ended up working in a retirement community right out of college. The pay was good. The benefits were good. And I was able to learn a lot and move my way up pretty quickly. And then from there, I just kind of started working. I worked in a catering company. I actually worked for IKEA at their home office in Pennsylvania. And most recently was with Sodexo at another retirement community where I was at for 10 years. So I love food and cooking and I love eating in restaurants, but I just never loved the work-life balance and all of that and all the nonsense that came along with maybe running your own restaurant. So I just decided I wanted to become a personal chef and bring like the restaurant experience to you. So 10 years ago, I started working on the side, trying to figure out how that would work. And 4 years ago, a little more than, I took it full time. So I go to people's homes and bring all the china and food and set the table and do like a multi-course meal for them. It's I love it. It gives me some creativity. As far as a business goes, it's got really low overhead. I have no employees. I don't have to have a commercial kitchen. There's, not a lot there. And I really enjoyed that. And that's my business. It's called Perfect Little Bites. And out of that, people kept asking me, how did you build and grow your personal chef business? And, I got tired of having one-off conversations with people and said, well, let's just start, like a Facebook group, right? We can share best resources. We can gig share. And I called it Chefs Without Restaurants. And I thought it was going to be like 4 people I knew. And now we have over, thousands of people across Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And now I have a podcast of the same name. And I've released 81 episodes where I talk to people who work in the food and beverage industry who are not working in a restaurant.
That's wild. When I first saw it, I told you, when I first saw it, I thought of 2 things. Okay. Cause I saw it about 3 or 4 months ago. I said, this is either chefs that are out of a job because of COVID, or this is people that are chefs, but not in the traditional form. They're not working in 4 walls. They're, maybe doing like, I know a guy who actually used to be a head chef of like 7 nursing homes in Cincinnati. And, he's not supplying food to the public, but he's supplying food to obviously a captive audience, and it has the same things that a restaurant has to deal with. You got to put up good quality, good service, and keep people happy.
Yeah, for me, the big thing was like teaching people how to do it because, everyone kept saying, I'll buy you coffee and tell me, how did you become a personal chef? How did you find your clients? How do you price? And it's exhausting to be able to do that, to just do that, one at a time. I said, well, if we have like this online community, we can talk about this in a much bigger sense. But then gig sharing was such a big part of it. Like if I'm booked on Friday night and then a customer reaches out to me and wants to book me, well, I'm a one-man show. So I would love to be able to share the wealth with like another personal chef I know. So I wanted to also be able to create this like sales funnel where we could, a referral network and share gigs. And that's kept me in business. I haven't had to pay any kind of advertising in the past 2+ years just because I'm getting job leads from other caterers and personal chefs in the area. So keeping that within our own ecosystem where you're not having to pay a Thumbtack or another company to get job leads.
Yeah. Plus, I'm sure I'm sure you work off a lot of referral as well, because, I've never personally had somebody come cook at my house, and I could see where that would be pretty unique. I mean, you like being at home. Maybe you suck at cooking like me and my wife, and neither one of us are great chefs. I did make a heck of a DiGiorno the other night though, full disclosure, but I can see where it'd be pretty cool. And that experience, I'm sure I would be telling my friends about, like, oh my gosh, here's what happened.
Yeah, well, definitely. And there's a lot of reasons people can't go out. I did a dinner last night and my guests have a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month-old. I mean, COVID out of the picture, if it were just normal times, they're not the kind of people who are going to go out. It was her birthday. So to be able to have a personal chef come in and still give you that restaurant quality experience where, the table's going to be set, you're going to have food fresh cooked for you there and served to you. And it can be, really interesting. Plus, I also customize all my menus. So like, they had diet restrictions, like they don't eat beef and pork. And, there's some other things they can't have. And because I'm cooking just for you tonight, I can build a customized menu around that. So I've really enjoyed doing this.
So I guess my perspective to ask a couple of questions also is looking at it from another way, that what can a restaurant operator learn from you? Because a restaurant operator, if you got a restaurant, you got your kitchen staff, you got your chef, you got all this stuff going on, there's a lot of components, whereas you're able to focus on, I'm making food for this couple last night. Here's the menu. You're pretty clean cut. You've got to worry about making an awesome meal, presenting it in an awesome fashion, and having a one-to-one. And I think a lot of restaurants struggle with that, especially with a friend of mine told me the other day when 30 Party came up. He's like, I actually went to friends of mine's houses and had them order Uber Eats from my restaurant, because I wanted to see if I got the same love and care on that plate as I did if I sat down, and there was a disconnect there. What do you see on your end, being a consumer, but also being that one-to-one chef from that standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that I've learned is streamlining. I think there's a lot of places to cut out fat in your business. So, not just because I didn't have a lot of money. So for me, it was like when I started, I bought my china used at Goodwill, or I bought it at IKEA, and not that I don't love the Steelite plates, but at $20 a plate, it starts to get a little ridiculous. But, figuring out how to run a lean operation, I think sometimes you have an abundance of money or staff. I mean, nobody has an abundance of money in the restaurant industry, but people do spend it like it's going out of style.
Yep.
But also like plating and my vision, because, you're in a restaurant and you've got how many people on the line. So the dishes, in my opinion, start to get a little over contrived when there's like 17 components on the plate. And I think that's an abundance of labor where you've got, a chef on the pass, a sous chef, line cooks, and all this. When I go to do a dinner, it's just me, right? And I'm doing a dinner sometimes for like 8 people by myself. Like, I really have focused on what is the best plate of food I can put out with the least amount of components in the quickest amount of time. And I think when you're in the restaurant, you're kind of like, oh, you've got all these unpaid stages or, cheap labor or extra people who have their hands in the pot. Like, I've really gotten a focus. So my food has gotten better, I think, and more concise and streamlined just from kind of doing this. So across the board, I'd say like figuring out how to work faster, better, and use your resources more effectively.
And that reminds me, I've got a podcast called MPTV where we travel and shoot in-person video podcast episodes. And we were in Moore, Oklahoma a few months ago and met with Picards, Brian, Catherine, and Mark. It's 2 brothers and a wife. And Catherine is the 3rd owner of the restaurant. She is in the medical profession. She works in the ER, and she's not a restaurant person. And she said she gets a kick out of it, though, because she'll come in and she'll watch the kitchen work. And she'll get back there and work the burgers. And she's like, why is this over here versus here? And kind of similar to what you just said is she brings a different set of eyes to maybe how do we streamline this? How do I quit going to walk over here to grab this and come back? And kind of what you said there was similar, pretty similar from a standpoint of how to streamline, how to be more efficient with whether it's your plating, whether it's your menu size, whether it's your ingredients or your layout.
Yeah, definitely. And, not knocking restaurants or anyone in them. I've worked in big kitchens, not restaurants per se, but I've run operations where I had, 100 people who reported to me. And, just kind of seeing how like every second matters, every dollar and penny matter, but really taking that into my own business and just knowing I've got no one to lean on and the finances are tight. So let's see if we can make something amazing with what I have.
Yeah, and I think your perspective is pretty cool to look at from my standpoint, that it's like I remember a company telling me their hot sauce they made, like they could make it in a small batch, but they couldn't figure out how to make it in a big batch and get the same flavor. So they had to hire a company that specialized in that. And I look at you're the same way, that think about a restaurant. If a restaurant can boil it down to table number 7 has to have quick service, great food, and great customer service. I just got to replicate that 100 times every hour. It's honestly, it might be a little easy. Maybe I'm dumbing it down, but for me, I look at like you had table number 1 last night with 2 adults, 2 kids. How do I replicate that into 100 houses, whether it's in 100 nights or whether it's in 1 night? I think that's kind of how some people have to do things. I've told people that all the time with what I do. I'm the same way. It's funny, the conversation you said earlier, people reach out to you. How do you find clients? How'd you build your business? I started a 1-person marketing operation doing Facebook advertising in 2008. My first clients were restaurants. And they're like, how did you do it? How do you have 28 people now? How are you nationwide? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I had to kind of like look at all of it. And it's like, I can't have this conversation a million times. I had so many people that wanted to pick my brain and buy me coffee. That was kind of the common thing. But I remember telling them, like, man, Matt, I see what you're doing now. Like, I've written 3 books. And the one guy the other day when I was in Arizona, he said, how did you write the books? I look at it and it seems impossible. Like, you got to break it down. It's 13 chapters. What is each chapter's main 3 components? How can you tell the story each chapter? Don't worry about writing 13 chapters. Write 1 chapter at a time.
Yeah, that's a good point. The same for me. It can get overwhelming, and especially when you're working by yourself, to not be able to shuffle off any of the work to anyone. So again, you have to focus on your biggest priorities. And then you just kind of realize there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do, but like, what is the main focus? And again, some of that stuff just has to trickle off and say, we're not going to get there, because I have to focus on, for me, it's like food quality, customer service. I have to build great relationships with, purveyors, like who I'm buying things from, and then, market and get in front of my customer. And then everything else, like if there's time, it can get in there, but I just had to streamline and focus on like, what are the core pillars of my business and go all in on that.
So question on a little different angle. So I had a client yesterday I was talking to, and he was complimenting me on the fact that he can communicate easily with our company. We're a small company, but a little bigger than normal. And he's like, Matt, I made a comment on a private group you guys have and asked for somebody to call me. And 5 minutes later, the CEO, called me. And I love that attention. I don't get that from the Yelps and the other places we buy advertising. So I pride ourselves on being, one-to-one and very personable. You're able to obviously do that because of you being one-to-one with every client. The restaurants lose out on that. They've got so many people to work with. What are some things that you see, or maybe you hear, as a consumer, or you hear from customers you're catering at home, of maybe some of the nuances of what turns people off about certain restaurants or things in restaurants that they don't enjoy versus what you do?
Yeah, I think the chefs talk a lot these days about customers wanting to change dishes, right? And now all these chefs have these things saying, oh, well, due to the nature of what we do, we can't accommodate your diet. And I understand, but, look on social media, all these chefs and restaurateurs are complaining about, oh, I got another gluten-free person. I got another whatever. That's not doing you any favors, I think, complaining about a core group of customers. Like, this stuff is not going away. We are going to see the continuation of the keto diets and the gluten-free diets and vegans and all that. And I think you're missing an opportunity, especially if you're going to come out and kind of bash those people on your social media. And, we think it's funny in the kitchen memes and posting photos of tickets with, a picky customer on them, but there's a real opportunity there. And people come to me because they're looking to get something maybe they can't get in a restaurant. Now, not everyone who comes to me has a special diet, but it's my time to really focus on them and give them exactly what they want. If I make a, cream of mushroom soup, and I normally put thyme in it, but in my pre-screen questionnaire, they say they don't like thyme, I can leave it out. I mean, that's the benefit. That's really hard when you're running a restaurant and you're putting out hundreds of covers. I understand, but is there a way that you can maybe meet in the middle and be a little more flexible and a little more accommodating, or at least not just come off like a kind of jerk in the way it's relayed? And I think sometimes there's also like the wait staff or front of the house who convey that message when they go back and ask the chef if they can, leave the pepperoni off the dish, and the chef just says no. And, I think you lose a lot there, and the customer service end is huge.
And you hit the nail on the head. It's you want to make everybody feel like that one-to-one experience you're giving. This is not the restaurant business, but what you just told me really reminded me of a friend of mine, a guy that I knew a long time ago. I haven't seen him in years. At one point, he owned the largest Mercedes dealership in the country. And you know how he became the largest Mercedes dealership in the country?
How's that?
Free car washes. And what happened was he said every Saturday, like every weekend, you'd have people come up. They're busy professionals. This is back in the 80s. Busy professionals. They bring their Mercedes up and they need to get service. And they're sitting around. And it's like, if you ever watch a bunch of U's, Matt, you know, type A's, entrepreneurs, business people, they don't want to sit around at a car dealership for 2, 3, 4 hours. They don't want to drop their car off and have their wife come get them, because this is before Uber and all that. He's like, so I was watching them and I realized there was a couple opportunities. It was, number one, I needed to have a loaner car program. I needed to do something different. Somebody drops their car off, give them the car. And so that started working, where people would come for service, drop their car off, and they would leave in the newest model, of course. And then 2 hours later, they're buying the new model. But he said on top of that, we started doing free car washes. He's like, we didn't do free car washes to wash the person's car. We did free car washes because I knew that those same people wouldn't want to wait while their car was washed. So we gave them a car to take to lunch. Hey, go to breakfast, go to lunch, come back, your car will be washed, detailed out front and your back. And he's like, we did it all for free. Nobody else in their right mind was doing this. And we sold more cars because of that loaner car program on the car wash. And he's like, it's like what you said there with kind of resonated with me was, it's a one-off thing. Like, how many people would have dealerships would just said, hey, come get your car washed, be happy with washing your car, get the heck, come back when it's done or wait. He kind of saw an opportunity to be unique for each customer, and I ended up selling him a bunch of cars. In the same way, if I'm a person like my daughter's boyfriend, Mason, has a peanut allergy. He can't be around peanuts. I accidentally the other day almost put an almond in his mouth when he was sleeping. I messed with him, and I remembered they reminded me he would have died. I'm like, oh, sorry. But imagine if he goes to restaurants and they cater to his peanut allergy. Hey, Mason, we know you got peanut allergy. We want to make sure you know this, this, and this. Michael Castleman, who was a member on my podcast, I think like the 6th or 7th episode in Rapid Fire Pizza in Florence, has a client of his. I don't know what the exact allergy is, but it's something with dairy. And they actually store something for him. The guy comes every week. They store what he's getting separately in the restaurant once a week. The guy comes in the restaurant and he has exact knowledge that his meal was taken care of. And he's like, Matt, we take that care for this customer. Comes back every week.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. And again, it's definitely hard when you work in a restaurant. You know, like I worked in a retirement community where people lived there, so you got to know them. So, you know, similarly, I had a customer who had a severe allergy to something else, and she would come in and, you know, if we were buying any kind of prepackaged thing, like any kind of condiment, like I had to go over the list with her and show her, and it took time, but like she felt comfortable eating there, you know, and said she couldn't go out and eat otherwise. But just like bringing that hospitality, I mean, a lot of chefs, most chefs are behind the doors of the kitchen, right? Like they don't have interaction with the tables. They might go around and do table touching, but I mean, I'm in your home for, 4 to 6 hours and can really build a good relationship with my customers. And I enjoy that.
Well, cool. Well, we appreciate your time. Is the best place to find out more at chefswithoutrestaurants.com?
Absolutely. Chefswithoutrestaurants.com. You can get more information about the organization. There's links to everything. I'd love for people to check out the podcast, and there's links to get into the community. So we have a private Facebook group where we, if you work in the food industry, not in restaurants, come join. And you can be a restaurant chef. We don't discriminate, but it's just, kind of geared towards food entrepreneurs and people looking for some support.
Cool. We appreciate your time and love what you're doing. Love what you're putting out there on Instagram. If you guys aren't following them on Instagram, that's where I follow Chefs Without Restaurants. Follow it. It's a great follow. It's great content, and love what you're doing. Keep up the amazing work. And thanks for coming on today.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
Cool. Enjoy the weather in Maryland. We'll enjoy it here in Kentucky.